U.S. and other countries determine what aid will go to the new republic, the Berlin military community has become involved in humanitarian missions to help the people of Russia through this period of transition. In this first in a series of reports from AFN Berlin, Sergeant First Class Greg Foss tells us about one such mission to a Russian town of Vitebsk.
On December 20th, 19 trucks and support vehicles loaded up and headed toward Vitebsk. This third trip was by far the largest, and relief organizer Philip Schmoll says that they had their share of troubles, starting with just getting through the Polish border.
We had a very difficult time getting across it. They did not seem to like the idea of the Russian trucks crossing the frontier with a lot of things, but after we paid $90 a vehicle, things seemed to move a little more slowly.
They arrived in Vitebsk 3 days later, a day behind schedule. They had made short work of delivering the food, clothing, and medical supplies, and they even had time to visit some area orphanages and handicapped homes.
And we're able to give them the Christmas presents, which meant a lot. And I have to give Tar School tremendous credit. Jan and Jules Fritz, together with their first graders, made tiny little presents. Very, very meaningful, hand-drawn cards, special Christmas greetings.
One of the most important items in the inventory was the business end of the printing process. They received initial equipment for writing over the summer, and during this trip, they got the printing press itself. Mr. Schmoll says that relief and aid is essential, but Vitebsk still has a long way to go.
It's a country of great potential, but not a lot of knowledgeable resources know what to do with them. And humanitarian aid is a very small portion. They realize that, but they would like to increase the contacts with us so we can get American know-how to help them develop in a democratic direction and also an effective direction so they know what to do with this country of theirs.
Army Sergeant Greg Foss, AFN, Berlin.
Last night we reported on the 8th Infantry Division and the 3rd Armored Division, which will be drawing down. Tonight we continue our look back at the history of these units and their accomplishments in use, sir. TV5's Lee Ferguson reports on the 3rd Armored Division during the Cold War. But first, USAR's Deborah Fowler takes us through World War II with the 8th Infantry Division.
After landing at Omaha Beach, Normandy in July of 1944, the 8th Infantry Division took over the center of the 7th Corps front. In France, the 8th ID broke through enemy lines, creating an opening so tanks of the 79th and 90th Divisions could swarm behind the German defenders. The 8th ID liberated the French port of Brest and later seized a 23-mile front on the German-Luxembourg border. At Hurtgen Forest, the division fought toe-to-toe with the enemy for 40 days until the Germans finally retreated. Elements of the division seized Cologne and were the first troops of the First Army to reach the Rhine. The division took nearly 320,000 prisoners during the war and returned to the United States with 4 battle streamers, 3 Medals of Honor, and 5 Distinguished Unit citations. In Bad Kreuznach, saluting the 8th Infantry Division, this is USAR's Deborah Fowler reporting for AFN News.
Like many combat units at the end of World War II, the 3rd Armored Division was inactivated. Only a few years later, however, due to increasing Cold War tensions, the division was one of the first of the Army's famous World War II units to be reactivated, this time to conduct training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. From 1947 to 1955, the 3rd Armored Division trained 1/4 of the Army's troops. In 1955, the division was redesignated a combat unit, and in 1956 deployed to Germany. Their mission, to prevent war, and if that failed, to fight and win. The 3rd Armored Division and the U.S. Army's mission has been a success, resulting in peace in Europe, the end of the Cold War, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. Operation Desert Storm allowed the 3rd Armored Division to once more demonstrate its abilities.
The 3rd Armored Division crossed the line of departure on 24 February at 1500 hours, attacking 28 kilometers into Iraq while encountering light sporadic contact. The following morning, the attack resumed with 2nd Brigade leading. Late in the day, the 2nd and 1st Brigades became fully engaged. On the morning of the 27th, the momentum of the attack surged with 1st and 3rd Brigade continuing to apply pressure and destroy enemy forces. 24 hours later, the ceasefire orders came. The division had traveled 233 kilometers in 4 days, attacking 3 divisions as it spearheaded the attack for the 7th United States Corps.
When hostilities ceased, the 3rd Armored Division changed its focus to maintaining law and order. They provided food, water, and medical care to Iraqi refugees and relocated many from Iraq to Saudi Arabia. This is just one part of spearhead history. For 5th Corps' Public Affairs Office, I'm Lee Ferguson with TV5 for AFN News.
While the 8th Infantry Division didn't deploy to Southwest Asia, it did play a significant part in the operation and its aftermath right here in Germany. USER's Deborah Fowler has more on the 8th ID's multifaceted mission during the Gulf crisis.
Desert Storm and its aftermath found 8th Infantry Division soldiers involved in operations around the world. Major General John Otchen is the division commander.
There probably wasn't any part of Desert Shield and Desert Storm that the 8th Division was not involved in. We had 4 battalions and 3,800 soldiers deployed to the desert as part of the 3rd Armored Division and 7th Corps. We helped prepare USER units to deploy. We supported them logistically. We ran barges up and down the river. We loaded barges, unloaded barges.
In April 1991, part of the division deployed to Turkey and Iraq to help Kurdish refugees during Operation Provide Comfort. In the summer, more 8th ID soldiers left Germany, this time for Kuwait. The 8th ID soldiers are home now, and on January 17th, they'll become part of the 1st Armored Division. In Bad Kreuznach, saluting the 8th ID, this is USER's Deborah Fowler for AFN News.
The ceremonies for the 8th Infantry Division and the 3rd Armored Division will take place tomorrow, and we'll have coverage of those in the evening news tomorrow night. The 1st Armored Division is also drawing down. 1st AD Commander Major General William Boyce recently presented several awards in Nuremberg to those civilians and soldiers who were instrumental in Operation Homeward Bound. The operation helped some 7,000 soldiers out-process from USER in just 5 months in a move that would normally span a year. The 6th Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division will be leaving Germany soon as part of the drawdown. The brigade will make its new home at Fort Bragg. Specialist Brad Christensen has this report on the inactivation ceremony.
The 3rd Infantry Division said farewell to one of its aviation brigades. The 6th Brigade, originally designated as the 3rd Aviation Battalion in 1957, consists of 2 attack helicopter battalions, 1 general support battalion, and a divisional cavalry squadron. Last April, the brigade deployed to northern Iraq and southwest Turkey to support the Kurdish refugees. Most of the soldiers are sad about leaving Germany.
Well, I hate to see all these good soldiers leave. They're good aircraft mechanics, and they supported us well. But then again, I know the wall is falling down, and it's time to reduce the amount of soldiers here in Europe, and I know that they will perform well and do good work for the Army in Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Now that their work is completed in Southwest Asia and here in Germany, the 6th Brigade looks forward to continuing their success as the 159th Aviation Group, 18th Airborne Corps at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. In Gielstadt, reporting for the 3rd Infantry Division Public Affairs Office, Specialist Brad Christensen, AFN News.
The Army is offering soldiers an opportunity to end their careers early in return for hefty separation bonuses. Applications that go through DA PERSCOM will be treated differently depending on whether they come from an officer or an enlisted person. DA PERSCOM Sergeant Major Larry Strickland appeared on AFN TV Live last night in the call-in program to clarify some of these points. He said enlisted personnel in Category 3 facing separation for MOS and grade will find the approval process lengthy and not a sure bet.
In each of those MOSs, we have drawn a certain line where we will meet the requirements of the Army at the end of FY92, and those numbers above the line are those that we can accept without breaking readiness. For example, if we have 50 too many soldiers in an MOS and get 100 applications in, we'll approve 50 of the applications that have come in.
What will you look at when you look at that?
The review process will be very, very detailed. We will look at the quality of the soldier that has submitted the request, the recommendations that have been placed on the request by the chain of command. People in Europe should not be concerned about, or in Korea for that matter, should not be concerned about some first come, first serve process. That is not the way that those applications will be reviewed.
Strickland added that those denied separation will remain in the service and can look forward to better promotion potential in their MOS. As we said, officer packets will be treated differently at FirstCom. Applications will be approved on a first-come, first-served basis to meet quotas for each skill. USAFE guests will answer questions on the Air Force Voluntary Separation Program next Wednesday night on AFN Radio and TV at 7:05. Well, tomorrow marks the one-year anniversary of the beginning of the war in the Gulf. But while the conflict is over, humanitarian aid missions in Southwest Asia are ongoing. Dale McCabe reports on the 21st TACOM's role in Operation Provide Comfort 3.
The soldiers of the 5th Quartermaster's Detachment are known as the Riggers due to their mission of preparing the parachutes needed for airlift drops. For quite a few, the trip to insular Turkey is their second.
You know, we got more of an idea of what we're going to do when we go down there this time than what we did last time.
And for others, this is their golden opportunity.
Why? Because I was here when everybody was over there having fun. I was over here hating it.
But perhaps Sergeant Ernest Chance sums it up best.
Everybody in the world is not as fortunate as the United States and most Americans.
A C-5 just arrived from Delaware's Dover Air Force Base opens up for pallet after pallet of the supplies needed for the mission ahead. The loading continues until the Big Bird, the largest military transport available, is full. Now it's time for the soldiers, and they will stay in Turkey until the job is done. At Ramstein Air Base, Gail McCabe, 21st TACOM, AFN News.
This week we've been featuring a series of stories on the Berlin military community's humanitarian mission to the Russian town of Vitebsk. Tonight, Sergeant Greg Foss tells us how one community's idea grew into an international aid effort.
The largest trip helping out the white Russian town of Vitebsk was the product of more than a year of raising money and collecting food and clothing. Randall Wall, one of the relief organizers that has participated in all three Vitebsk relief efforts, says there's a big difference between the first and third trip.
It started with as an idea to take a van load of food and clothing to the Orthodox Church in Vitebsk, which was just beginning to get off its feet. But it soon mushroomed with a tremendous amount of help from the American and German community into a couple of semi-loads and a couple of vans. But then it's still delivered by a small group of American teachers, along with a couple of German drivers. Whereas over this last year, it snowballed into a major effort to collect food, clothing, money, particularly money towards the printing press.
The printing press will be a long-term help to the church in Vitebsk. It gives them independence in the state press, and they'll be able to contract out to other churches and organizations to make their printing efforts self-sufficient. Raising money for the printing press was not as hard as relief workers thought it would be.
It seemed at first to be a tremendous endeavor to raise some $25,000 and buy this press material by purely amateurs, to say the least. But with a lot of help, it worked because it was a very worthwhile cause. And the way it was received by the Belarusian people in Vitebsk was just tremendous.
There is so much support for the relief efforts for Vitebsk that another trip is in the works for later on this year.